Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. How are you?
Right on, living the dream, man. Just
Yeah.
hoping that connection. You're out in Massachusetts today, and
I am.
hoping that connection stays strong so we can do this show.
Is it starting poorly? Do I look all over the place and jittery?
It started out a little. You're like you kind of jumped around a little bit. It's all right. It's all right. We'll see how this goes.
All right.
But yeah, no. We have a few good topics for y'all today. Joe Biden, of course, being a clown as usual. So we're going to talk about that.
This guy, he's such a joker, Kevin. We've got an impending financial collapse, and he's going to save us bounce check fees. Like he's going to go after those evil, greedy credit card companies. Like,
yeah, he's got a bunch of stuff going on. I was going to talk about tariffs, but like we could jump into like a half dozen issues, right? Like we can talk about the mortgage thing too.
Yeah, he's a mess. This guy. It's like somebody tells him what to say, and he just repeats it. You know. Barely,
like literally,
barely.
Like him reading off the teleprompter is hilarious.
He's not having a good time with that. He's reading literally the words like insert pause.
Stop for applause. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So we got that guy, Donald Trump, ranting about how Hannibal Lecter seems like a good man, and a dude with literal brain worms. Those are our big options for.
Yeah. Everything's going to be fine, though. Everything is going to be fine.
Those are three choices that are most likely to be on like all ballots, and hopefully the LP will too. But it's still going to be a fight.
Yeah, they're going to have a hard time getting on in New York. I tell you that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be rough. We'll see. I hope the team pulls it out. But
yeah, me too.
But I know Patricia's like, you're picking on a sick old man and a psychotic old man. Wow. Yeah. Sorry.
I know.
I would feel much more sympathetic if all three of them weren't trying to be president. It's
fair. It's fair.
I
feel bad, and yet I don't.
Yeah. they get no quarter, if they're trying to like exercise power over me. Sorry, but
yeah.
It's
reasonable.
How it goes. I think. Yep. If they want to be sympathetic, they can drop out and into private life, and they could do what George W. Bush does. Like, he's a painter. Look at his paintings. He's fine. Obama, he's making documentaries. It's whatever, right? I mean, I'm still mad at them for what they did while presidents, but like what they do now, I don't care. It doesn't matter. If they were sick, I'd be like, that sucks, I guess. But
what if this documentary is actually like a forecasting of the impending method of collapsing society? Like, doesn't that concern you at all?
Maybe. Is Obama doing that? I knew he was doing something with Netflix, but he was like making movies or documentaries or something.
He made a movie, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but people are like, yeah, this is how they're going to do it. They're going to knock out a bridge. It's going to disrupt these things. Then it's going to disrupt communications, and it's going to be a mess. That's was the premise of the movie.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. If he's just revealing his plans in the documentary, I don't know.
That's what they're saying.
Stay informed. Anyway, we should quit messing around and actually get to the actual show at some point.
Yeah, we better do that.
So we'll talk about that, the Dexter Taylor gun case. We'll talk about some subsidies for golf in the Rochester area.
Yeah.
And who knows what else. Y'all know how it goes. Drop your comments if we find something interesting. You can send us on a tangent. That's how we are. All right, we're gonna go in about 10 seconds. 3, 2.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. I'm being the world traveler. I don't have a great setup, but I'm here to commit to the WYSL audience and our internet friends and family. I'm here.
That's right. Tim is dedicated, folks. No matter where in the world he's going, he's doing a show.
I want to be here with you guys. Yeah,
right.
It's important.
That is dedication, folks.
It is.
So thanks, WYSL audience, for joining us and online audience for joining us. We've got a couple different topics to chat about today. We start out talking about Joe Biden and all the shenanigans he's up to nowadays. We're going to talk about a guy named Dexter Taylor, who is accused of making ghost guns in New York, in a courtroom where the Second Amendment doesn't exist. The actual quote from the judge. It's wild. Maybe we'll get to talk about some golf subsidies, a few other things as well. Of course, if you're listening online, drop your comments if you have something else that you want us to talk about. Maybe we'll get to it. You know how it goes. So let's talk about Joe Biden. Well, I'm going to read off the Joe Biden. Well, I'll read off the tweet today.
Yeah.
And he says, quote, "I just imposed a series of tariffs on goods made in China. 25% on steel and aluminum, 50% on semiconductors, 100% on EVs, electric vehicles, and 50% on solar panels. China is determined to dominate these industries. I'm determined to ensure America leads the world in them." Tim, what do you think of this new tax?
Well, first I want to just read from an earlier Joe Biden who said, Trump doesn't get the basics. He thinks tariffs are being paid by China. Any freshman econ student could tell you that American people are paying his tariffs. Why the change of heart, you doddering old fool? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I do love in the replies, like thousands of people, including me, have been like just quote tweeting that right back at him. Like, dude, you were right the first time. Like, you're absolutely right that like Americans are the ones who are going to pay these tariffs. It's going to make American goods more expensive, or like American consumers are going to have to spend more money to buy stuff, right, on these different goods. So like, it's not trivial either, right? Like the 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, it's a continuation of a bad Trump policy that he was correct to criticize. And it doesn't just like prop up American like metalworks, right? It's not just protecting the American steel industry. Everything that buys those vehicles produced in America, washing machines, construction costs, everything that uses those materials is now going to go up because Joe Biden is imposing another tax on us. Again, without Congress too. He's just imposing it. Basically kind of abusing tariff law to be able to impose these. And that's in addition to all the other stuff too, the electric vehicles and semiconductors, all that stuff, with the explicit goal of like trying to protect and shore up American industries. Tim, let me steelman this a little bit. Do you think there's any legitimate national security reason to do any of this?
Well, in a way there is, right, Kevin? On some level, a steel industry in the United States is in fact important, but the need to impose tariffs on China is actually suggesting something else, that our industries are overregulated, that we haven't found ways to be a clean producer, that China can't make these things for free, but we can't compete with them without an onerous extra taxation imposed on them. So there's a couple of issues in there that are real, like not having a dying steel industry, having a steel industry that dies because China is out competing us could in fact be a real problem. Right? I mean, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like the thing is like there is still some American steel manufacturer. I know one of them was trying to be bought by a Japanese company too, which Joe Biden is like freaking out about and blocking, even though that company was struggling to stay open at all. But we also can buy steel from, Canada and Europe. But I agree, like with the general premise of what you're saying, though, is like part of the reason that these industries are struggling to thrive is is regulation too. Some of it's just like, a shift in like what sort of jobs people want to do. But the other part of it is like it's tough for these industries to be able to thrive because of the environment that was created around them, the requirements that the government imposes on these things. Like I mean, part of why like we're gonna start to see more expensive things like solar panels, which they're also trying to do, the semiconductors, which the CHIPS Act just subsidizes the heck out of, right? The semiconductor production in the United States. But part of the reason why like those haven't like taken off in the way that democratic policies have like wanted is because they throw all these other requirements on, like, okay, you have to have these specific types of union contracts that require this level of pay and like impose these DEI requirements and impose these like environmental review requirements and thing after thing after thing after thing that makes it impossible for the industries to ever get off the ground. So if everything else needs to keep going because like we want solar panels, we want semiconductors, we want electric vehicles, if Americans want to get those things, they have to get them from a country that like already is producing them, because like the government has imposed so many requirements preventing these companies from getting off the ground and expanding production to meet consumer need.
Correct. Right. Like, so there's the multi-layered issue of this whole thing. Yes, it would be nice to have a thriving steel industry. Yes, it would be nice to have a thriving solar panel industry. We can't compete. But are tariffs actually the answer? Is a supply side shock to the price of these things? Who does that impact, Kevin?
Yeah, it ends up impacting us as the people trying to consume these products. And like any take you have on it too, like, okay, like semiconductors are used in so many products, right? Like, so we got to get them. So either we consume less of those things that we want because they're expensive, either produced by Americans or produced by wherever else, or we just pay more for them, which means we have less money in our pocket to go and spend on things like, rising food costs, rising housing costs, things like that.
Well, luckily, to counter all of that, Biden has a couple of really good plans out there, Kevin. Like, he is going to attack the check fees. If you bounce a check, he is going after your bank to lower those fees. Like, nobody should have to pay $30 if they bounce a check. It's something more like $5. I don't know. Like, there's a level of incompetence to Bidenomics that's quite impressive, really. Right? Here we are facing an impending financial collapse. People are probably going to be bouncing more checks because they're not making ends meet because of all of the inflation. And this guy's got the answer. This guy's got not a long-term solution. He is going to help people save money on their fees for bouncing checks. It's wild, okay? Like, it's wild.
All right. So this isn't the first time the government has done this. They've done this with overdraft fees. They've done this with various banking fees. Here's the thing, and it's you're kind of playing whack-a-mole with banks, because they're not going to just say like, ah, shucks, guess we're not making money now. That's not how that works. They're going to move it somewhere else, right? Like, so like, because a lot of banks, what they used to do, and they don't do much anymore, is they used to just charge you a fee for maintaining your account, right? And a lot of banks offer free checking accounts. Okay, so if they can't collect a fee for a bounced check anymore or for an overdraft, they're just going to charge you for the account. So either way, you're paying money, but like for people who can maintain that balance or are able to like set up systems where there's no overdraft fee because it goes to a credit card or something, there's like different ways of being able to avoid that.
Yeah.
Like, you can do that and not pay any fee and manage your finances effectively. Or that cost can be posed on people who actually overdraft, right? I know, like, oh, it's people who are poor, people who are having a rough time. I know, but like, you cannot write a bad check, and someone's going to be paying for that somewhere, right? Everyone's always there's nothing for free. You can't just, it doesn't matter if the government like says like, hey, just do this thing for free and make less money. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not how that's
not how it works. Right.
They're not gonna. Sorry, I hate to break the naivete of like the Democratic Party, but like banks aren't gonna just say like, guess we'll just not profit today. Wrong. It's not going to happen.
No, they're going to find other ways to make money.
Yeah, I hold it against them. That's just what they do, right? I've said this before. I don't get mad at people making profit as long as they're not doing anything like really nefarious and hurting people. But like getting mad at banks wanting to make money is like shaking my fist at the tide. Like, sorry, it's just it's gonna happen. Like that's what they do.
It's part of the plan. That's what they're in business to do, is make money. And like, yes, some of their fees are ridiculous. Yes, some of their fees seem exorbitant. But like Kevin says, if they take that off the table as a direct charge to someone that bounces the check, everybody is going to have to pick up the slack. So our banking is going to, either they'll pay less interest, they'll go back to charging small fees for managing your accounts, whatever. Everybody's going to have to pick up the slack. It's very annoying. Speaking of workarounds, Kevin, we didn't quite get to the workaround on the Biden's new China tariff. Okay, there's workarounds. China can ship its stuff to Mexico. China can ship its stuff to Vietnam and sneak it in without getting nailed with the tariff. You know, they sneak it to Mexico and they repackage it in Mexico, and then all of a sudden we're buying Mexican semiconductors that were made in China but have been repackaged in Mexico. So there's plenty of ways that a black market's going to be encouraged. So it's just wonderful stuff. Yeah, one-dimensional thinking. It's great. We're led by, Joe Biden.
No, it's just, and you're totally right. That's a good point to bring up. It's just like, it's not actually going to solve like the problem, right? Like you're still going to be able to get like your, Alibaba like stuff if you want it to. You've now got to like pay a mediator to like, again, ship it to Mexico with another company that's going to add a fee on top of that. It's just, we're still going to
just a middleman.
Yeah, you just have another middleman to add extra costs and extra time to it. And, and the other thing I do want to point out, like I know this is a conservative stage, but I want to like the lefties are always like, oh, we need to like increase the number of like renewable energy, the amount of renewable energy we have, right? Like by building more solar. Okay, if you want to build more of something, lower taxes on it. If you want less of something, raise taxes on it. Just lower taxes. Like if you want to, like if you actually care about like the environment, if you actually care about like reducing our carbon footprint, okay, then like make it cheap for like people to be able to get that alternative, right? And what are they doing in this case? They're making it more expensive for people to have an alternative that reduces the amount of like carbon that we use in our energy. Why? Like, and they do that all the time too. Like back to the government requirement things. Like, why is nuclear power so expensive? In part, it's regulations, it's requirements, it's like labor requirements, it's safety checks that are like well beyond what is necessary. If you actually care about the environment, make it easier for people to do that thing.
Yeah. So like, just I want to throw this out there on nuclear power. We've had nuclear powered subs since the 50s, right? Since the 40s. I don't know. We've had nuclear powered subs. We have this transportable nuclear power plant that swims through the ocean. And we can't figure out how to get them to travel around on wheels from place to place on land. Like we can't compact that whole issue of nuclear power and bring it locally. Like, I don't understand that. There's obviously some sort of
So I got someone to correct me on this, actually. Like I think it's Brandon from New York, Brandon Lyons. He basically the reason why like nuclear powered shipping and like in other things like that haven't really taken off is because the level of enriched uranium that you need is so high that it can be used to make like nuclear weapons. Okay. So that's why like they don't want just random nuclear power ships running around there, and why it's kind of the exclusive domain of the military. It's the quality of the enriched enrichment of uranium required is just makes people a bit nervous. So that's apparently the reason why, which I didn't know, which I was like, because I was mad about that too, and I was like, it's ridiculous. Oh, excuse me, it's ridiculous that we haven't solved that yet, but they're working. There are ways of working on. There's like a lower tier of enrichment that is able to be used in commercial vessels that hopefully will get regulatory approval for at least like commercial shipping in the next like decade or so. But anyway, well, small tangent there.
Yeah, it always puzzles me when we get into talking about power and green renewable power, and why hasn't nuclear power become more effective, and why can't we just haul it around in trucks like we do in ships? So, okay, I guess in a way I get it, but I guess if we weren't such a warmongering society, we wouldn't have to worry about that, you know?
if we weren't such wusses about everyone having highly enriched uranium, then like, yeah, we just have nuclear powered trucks like riding around here. I could have one in my backyard.
Yeah,
I
I would too.
I know.
I would too.
That's the libertarian future right there. It's just a nuclear powered pickup trucks.
Well, limitless clean power is a libertarian future for the entire world, and everyone, once their net income starts to increase, cares more about the environment. We'd have a cleaner world. It would be a better situation. It's something nice to think about. I guess it's something nice to talk about, and I'd like to see it in my lifetime. But what are the odds?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it'd be great to see some of that, and it'd be great to remove some of the barriers to that too. Like it is possible. We could do better. It's just that Democrats specifically have to choose between, do we enrich our cronies, the people who have like lucrative government contracts, the nonprofits who do environmental reviews, et cetera, or do we actually do something to make it easier for American businesses and industries to thrive that can benefit average everyday people? And the Democrats consistently choose the former.
They choose A every single time, right? They choose
every single time. Yeah.
This is how we're going to make the world a better place, by growing government and bureaucracies. So, and empowering bureaucracies.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's great.
And so actually let's continue to dunk on Biden for a couple more minutes, because we have a few more minutes in this segment. Have you also heard about his plan to subsidize first-time home buyers again, to give like a $400 a month credit for first-time home buyers?
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, he says,
okay.
Again, let me quote his tweet again. So, my dad always used to say, the way to build wealth is by building equity in your home. My housing plan will help Americans achieve home ownership by giving households $400 a month for 2 years when they buy their first home. Okay. And again, on the surface, it seems like, oh, well, that's nice. Like, people get a little bit of help for their first couple years. Tim, what's going to happen when we subsidize demand again? What's going to happen in the housing market when we make it impossible to build houses, but we just keep subsidizing demand? Well, I'll answer for you. Yeah. It's going to make housing more expensive.
Right. When they distort the market, it makes housing more expensive. It's an absurd concept, Kevin, but they keep going. They keep going with these absurd concepts.
Yeah. There's that meme of like the guy walking into the room with his son. It's like, I just need to subsidize demand. I just need to subsidize demand. And it's just like around and around and around and around. It's like, yeah, just need to subsidize demand. And that's like the government's only solution to this stuff. Like, oh no, we can't just let people build stuff. We can't let people just do what they want to do. We're just going to subsidize it, like, again and again. California has done it, and it didn't work. Other states have tried to do the same thing. Giving people $400 a month for the first couple of years is just not. It's not going to make housing more affordable. It's going to continue to raise the price of housing if you don't fix the other end of it.
Yeah, no, it's, again, we talk about market distortions, and like when we subsidize demand in an already out of whack market, there's already an overabundance of demand for housing than there is more housing available, correct? So when we get into subsidizing demand even higher, we're just going to be making a mess of things. Without lifting restrictions on building, without lifting restrictions on zoning, without lifting restrictions on what a house is supposed to be, we're just going to keep creating a mess.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's what's going to end up happening. And so we can fix it. Just get government out of the way. Let people build houses. Make it easier for people to build apartments. Yeah, that's all you got to do. All right. So anyway, we're heading up on break now. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
I don't know what happened there. I was kind of hearing you, and then it kicked out, and then it came right back on. I don't know. Stupid hotel internet.
Yeah. No, 100%.
So we got a fiery crowd out there tonight, Kevin.
Yeah. We get to. I want a thorium-powered school bus to drive. Gina, Facebook. Right on.
I love it.
Yeah, why not? That's definitely a thing that's happening. That people are looking at more thorium-based solutions for nuclear power as well, and there's some pros to it. I mean, uranium-powered stuff is pretty good too. It's safe, but Patricia says the Simpsons ruined nuclear power for a few generations. Like partially, right? Like, I mean, it's I like people do think like, oh, it's just a bunch of goofballs who are like letting meltdowns happen, and there's barrels of like glowing green waste around. It's not really what it looks like. It's little pellets and some cement things that don't really take up all that much space. But part of that, I mean, part of it's also movies like the China Syndrome, and then like the 3 Mile Island incident and stuff like that.
There's some legit, like Chernobyl was pretty legit. Like it's had nuclear power has a legit disaster behind it,
Yeah, but I always point out like, okay.
This is a shout out to my friend Kenny. Haven't heard from him in a while. Blue states kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, arguably, I get it. The Democrats have a substantial power base right now that seems undisruptible, but somehow we've got to persuade them. We're not going to like out argue them. We have to persuade them.
Yeah, and it's not just to be clear. It's not just Team Blue who's growing government and making their lives worse too. Sorry, Kenny. I'm not partisan in that sense. The Republicans have plenty.
Yeah, but we'll go with that. That'll work.
Tim O'Connor for president. Fair enough, man. I'd vote for Tim. Get him on the ballot. I was just gonna point out real quick though, nuclear power has fewer deaths per like hour of power produced than any other form of power. I know Chernobyl's a thing, but that says more about Soviet incompetence than nuclear power itself. Because oh boy, go watch it. Like the HBO special is a little bit sensational, but like it's not all that far from like the actual truth. The Chernobyl special. Yeah. If your message out of that is nuclear power is scary, you're not paying enough attention. The message should be the Soviets had no idea what they were doing, and they're more interested in preserving the system and saving their own butts than trying to keep anyone safe.
Yeah.
And so
makes sense.
Yeah, well, let's get to a couple more of these other ones. Robert pointing out we have hydrogen power for vehicles as well. Yeah, it's a thing. It's and I'm fine with that. Like I'm fine with different and new forms of energy. There's cool stuff you can do with hydrogen power, like using like the stuff that goes above demand for power with solar power, converting some of that into hydrogen. Because sometimes solar produces more during the day than can actually be consumed immediately, and same with wind. And then same with like tidal stuff too. So good kind of passive ways of being able to turn power that doesn't need to be used immediately, because that's what has to happen is the power needs to be used as it's generated. You can then turn that into a form of storage, either batteries or using hydrogen power, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I needed another MK Ultra before we started our next segment.
Fair enough. I'm still doing like non-alcoholic beers. But I got a NA Guinness, which is pretty good. The NA Guinness isn't bad actually. It tastes like a Guinness. So
all right, that's cool. You're practicing for when you're better, and that's good.
That's right. So we'll be eventually. They told me I could have like a beer, but like they're like, yeah, but like really only one. I was like, okay,
that's fair.
So, but anyway, yeah. Let's see. Trying to think of any more comments we want to get to.
No, I think we got to go back in and we got to talk about Dexter Taylor. It's a big deal. It's a big deal what happened to this guy.
Yeah, no, let's Let's talk about him. So we'll go in about 10 seconds and talk about Dexter Taylor and what's going on with him. So back in 5, 4, 3. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. And look, our next subject, Kevin, it's a really big deal. I think it gets under-discussed in the news. I think we get used to laws being written that contravene our rights. And I think everybody in New York State ought to wake up to the fact that what happened to Dexter Taylor is an absolute tragedy, and it's a violation of natural rights, and it's a violation of the Second Amendment. And hopefully it'll get turned over on appeal. But what was demonstrated in a New York court of law is an exceptional amount of authoritarianism and a fear-based narrative that has no business existing in our country. So what do you think about that as an introduction?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, solid overview of kind of the meta narrative around what's going on in this case, right? Like everything going on in New York State, and the erosion of Second Amendment rights, the fear like that they ginned up around this guy too. So let's go into the detail before we go in more in that. Let's go into like what he actually is accused of doing, which is basically he's accused of making like ghost guns, right? Like he's accused of, he's got 13 different weapons charges, and they said and the jury ended up finding him guilty. They're appealing it, but they found him guilty of second-degree criminal possession of a loaded weapon, 4 counts of third-degree criminal possession of weapon, 5 counts of criminal possession of firearms, second-degree criminal possession of 5 or more firearms, unlawful possession of pistol ammunition, violation of certificate of registration, and prohibition on unfinished frames or receivers. So basically, this guy was a hobbyist, right? So what he does, like when they're accusing him of like producing ghost guns, is he was a hobbyist. He figured out like back in 2020, like, oh, okay, so like I can legally go and buy like different parts of weapons, and I can, drill them out and build my own guns, right? And that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to just, it's like I could buy a receiver and I could machine that, and like he could put it together and he can make a working rifle, and he found that interesting. He said, "This is the coolest thing ever, most cool thing you could possibly do in a machine shop." It's a direct quote from Dexter Taylor, and yeah. So this is all he's doing now. The like ATF and New York State folks, they're freaked out, right? Like they're like they made it sound like this is a guy who's building up an arsenal and is fixing to go shoot up like a neighborhood or something like that, right? Made him out to be like a total monster instead of exactly what he is, which is a software engineer who's a hobbyist.
Correct. Like I have a quote, Kevin, from I believe his last name's Gonzalez. He's the DA, the prosecuting DA on this, and he's crowing about his success. He says, "Ghost guns are a threat to New Yorkers everywhere, and my office is working tirelessly with our partners in law enforcement to stop their proliferation. Today's sentence should send a message to anyone who, like this defendant, would try to evade critically important background checks and registration requirements to manufacture and stockpile these dangerous weapons. Every ghost gun we take off the street is a win for public safety." Now, that is such an overstatement as to what happened here, but by comparison, it's incredible. It's like a political narrative, fear-based, fear-mongering narrative to drive something that he probably in his heart of hearts feels guilty about prosecuting. Dexter Taylor is not a law-abiding citizen, period.
Yeah. Again, he
never been in trouble with the law.
Never in trouble. Not violent. He wasn't selling these to people too. Like, okay, like I could at least like sort of understand that if he was just like, yeah, whatever, I'm not gonna do, any sort of background checks. I'm just gonna like give these guns away to like kids on the street. Okay, like I at least like get the logic in that, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
we can debate like whether or not we should have like that type of background check, but I can at least get the logic of that, right? But in this case, like the man has harmed no one. He's done nothing but like pursue a hobby. Like, so like where's the actual victim here? Like, where is the actual like reason to send this man to jail?
He's a white supremacist, Kevin.
To be clear, I'm pretty sure Dexter Taylor is African American, but
Oh,
you know,
right. I talked to him a little bit in the past. I did donate to his cause. He is, in fact, an African American. I don't see any trappings of white supremacy about him. I didn't see
that's
anything dangerous about him at all. I enjoyed his presentation of his situation on the Larry Sharp show, and it's very unfortunate that we can just do this to people. Like I said, there's an opportunity maybe he'll win on an appeal, but I don't know, Kevin.
yeah. I mean, hopefully, I mean, like, gosh, look, the quote from the judge is wild. The quote from the judge when they were trying to bring up a Second Amendment issue during the trial, she said, "Do not bring the Second Amendment into this courtroom. It doesn't exist here, so you can't argue Second Amendment. This is New York." Well, yeah, I mean
that statement alone should be grounds for appeal, correct?
yeah, right. Because the Second Amendment does in fact apply in New York. I mean, the Bruin decision like made that pretty clear. I mean, in addition to all the other, legal precedent relating back to the 14th Amendment and the incorporation clause going back to the 1860s and saying that the states have to getting your fundamental rights in the same way that the national government is. It's wild that a judge can get away with saying that, right? Like in New York State, it's interesting. Like this is like the New York State government model as a whole is like, interestingly enough, states' rights, but their states' rights in violating our individual rights when it comes to the Second Amendment is that they feel like it doesn't apply here, and they're going to keep bucking against any attempt to prevent New York State from restricting our right to self-defense.
Yeah, I do think that if you have financing available, seek out the Dexter Taylor case, donate a few bucks to his appeal. It will provide some support, even emotional support to this situation. And look, unfortunately, one of the problems with our legal system is that it's incredibly expensive to refight a case that you've already lost. So he's going to need financial help. In a way, it's incumbent upon all of us to give him a hand with that. So that's what I'm saying. Try to seek him out and donate a few bucks to his campaign. It will benefit all of us, especially if he wins an appeal.
Yeah. I mean, because that's where like our rights get. I agree. That's where our rights get solidified in a lot of these cases. Like Tim is that, someone needs to say like, no, the government can't do this. The government can't get away with this. And then you create cases that judges are then able to reference and say, oh, look, like we already decided this. We already hashed this out. The government doesn't have a right to prevent you from being able to, make guns as a hobbyist. And again, I think like the sentence they're going to give this guy is like 18 years.
10 is what I understand it to be right now. That he was convicted and he's been sentenced to 10 years in prison.
10 years in prison is what they. I mean, that's still a really long time. Like 10 years in prison is an incredibly long time for, especially someone at 52 years old who has no history of violence. But New York State does this thing, but prosecutors will do this thing where they want to make examples out of people, as you kind of said. And it doesn't matter that they're ruining this guy's life. They want to get their example.
Yeah, if I may jump in with something too. Libertarians are fond of saying they have certain catechisms or buzzwords or campaign platforms that they'd like to use. Simple possession is not a crime. That's one of the things that when we see a situation like this, when we see even someone struggling with drugs, okay, simple possession harms no one. No crime was committed in the manufacturing of these guns, in him being a hobbyist, and him participating in his hobby. No one was harmed by that. There was no threat to society. He acted on none of it. Simple possession is not a crime. That's a reality. Crimes, right? Patty or Shelley out there in YouTube land says, this is New York. We don't need no stinking victim to prosecute a crime. Crimes are supposed to have a victim for them to be crimes. Like, that's a reality.
Yeah, you have to trace back.
I just had to get that out there. Like, this is where one of our things can make sense to a broader public when we're talking about simple possession not being a crime. It applies in the Dexter Taylor case.
Yeah, 100%. And a couple other comments here. Real Man One says, remember that the U.S. Constitution no longer exists in New York State. So sad. Yeah, kind of. Like, Kathy Hochul's made that clear. Like, she doesn't really care about Supreme Court decisions. They're going to go ahead and try to, which is the same thing. Like, so that all the gun laws that passed after Bruin, we talked about them on the show. Like, again, they're not going to get repealed. Like, they're just trying again. They're not going to get repealed until someone like challenges them. And unfortunately, challenging them also requires a victim of the state to say, like, nope, you shouldn't be able to prosecute me for like this made up crime, this violation of my fundamental rights. And then they've got to spend a bunch of money, like in this case, and possibly sacrifice their freedom in order to like get the courts to clarify once again that we have the individual right to self-defense, as outlined in the Second Amendment.
Yeah. Well, they're going to sacrifice many thousands of hours of their time and whatever financial gains that they may have accumulated. All that stuff is absolutely going to be sacrificed in situations like this. Dexter Taylor is going to come out of this broke regardless of how much money we give him. He's already lost his job, right? So
yeah,
it's a real issue, and it's really unfortunate that people don't, that the government will punish someone for a victimless crime. So
yeah,
I don't
know. We'll
send them a few bucks. That's, I guess, what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I'll pop the link in our chat here, and let's see. I think you brought up the Larry Sharp one too. I'll see if I can pop the link in for that later as well, because I think he had the lawyer on in the show to talk about it. It's interesting. So they'll dive into that a lot more than we've had time for today. And Tim, we wanted to bring up one other case. I know we have like a few minutes. The one with the airmen. Do you want to talk about that?
I certainly do want to talk about that. And I think it will probably carry over to the next segment, Kevin. But a young man in, I believe it was Florida, right? Yeah, Okaloosa County, Florida. Roger Forston opened the door of his Florida apartment with a gun in his hand and was immediately shot 6 times by a sheriff's deputy, responding to a complaint about an argument. I think that there's a big story here as well. And I think it's going to be an important one for us to hash out. Us, our audience, the people on WSL, we got to have a conversation about what happened here. So
this is another one of those.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, this is another one of those cases that tends to divide conservatives, where conservatives end up coming down, I think, against the Second Amendment because the police are involved. And, in this case, they're like, well, the police officer had to protect themselves, so shoot first, figure it out later, right? But at the same time, it's like, if you are in possession of a gun in your home and not using it and not like raising it against someone, like, and a police officer can just shoot you for that simple fact, do you in fact have a Second Amendment right to own a gun at all? If you can be killed for exercising that right.
And again, it's a deep, I like how you framed this discussion where conservatives divide themselves from their own rights because they want to back a government agent. And look, I understand that the police officer was afraid. I would be afraid too. I understand that he had a split second to make a decision. I still think that if you watch the body cam footage, I think he made the wrong decision, Kevin. I don't see it. Yeah. I think it's going to be a tough one to just settle in a few sentences. We have to have a longer conversation. I hope that the people that are with us now will continue. I hope that we'll comment on it. And I think we're coming up on what needs to be a break, right?
Yeah, we are coming up on a break. So You're right. Well, it's not going to do. We'll jump right into it afterwards. Then maybe we'll get back to like one of the local issues too. Thanks again for joining us here on the Free Solution on WYSL. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
It's a complicated one because, again, you and I are pragmatic about police officers existing. By comparison to, hire your own police officer for your neighborhood watch and stuff like that. That we have a system that already offers us police officers. I don't necessarily. This is a case where I don't know. I don't want to freak out about the cop, but I don't like the notion that conservatives will divorce themselves from the Second Amendment to have a conversation about this. It's never that cut and dried, and I think that they need to learn to relax, or something. Yeah. Maybe that's not the right way to put it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we get this case like, actually, we'll just we'll save the discussion for the actual show. Let's just jump back in 10 seconds, and
okay.
We'll keep going because I have a couple other things to say. Because other times they've fallen short too. I mean, back in 5, 4. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Bearing O'Connor.
I think, Kevin, and I hate to jump right back into the subject, but ahead of this, we were talking about a young airman down in Florida who was shot in his apartment. And I think one of the biggest issues that you and I probably want to present to the WYSL audience and our friends out there in the internet is how often people will divorce themselves from their rights to satisfy an emotional, for lack of a better word, platitude. Like backing the blue is a blanket emotional statement that should not be evoked in situations like this. I think a critical look needs to be taken at this situation, and I think it's fair that we're asking for it. I think that's the best way to frame that for our conservative friends. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like the thing, keep in mind, like you and I, we both talked about, like, we're not like anti-police, like we're just not. But also, like, police are agents of the government who are there to commit violence on behalf of the government, and sometimes they're going to make mistakes. And when they do so in a way that violates our individual rights and liberties, we need to work on ways to make sure that we correct that and prevent that from happening. I think that's totally fair. But like you see, like in this case, again, like I don't know if you've watched like the police body cam footage, but like the guy like answers the door like I
did.
Yeah, he answers the door, and like it is like a second later. There's no like put down your weapon. It's just bang. It's instant. There's no attempt to disarm. There's no attempt to understand
command
what's happening.
To put down the gun until after the young man was shot.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Did we crosstalk? My apologies. There was no command to put down his gun until after he was already shot. So that's a problem.
Yeah. And so like in situations like this, it's like, yeah, I know people want to like be on the side of police officers, but also like there are a bunch of people who like you get a strange knock and like, and I know not everyone does this, but like some people, that's what they'll do. They'll come to the door like armed because they're not sure what it is, or maybe they're in a tense situation and they don't know. I mean, I think back to like other cases too, like the Breonna Taylor case as well, because her boyfriend didn't know what was going on. Like it was a like a late night raid, like, and you don't know like who's actually knocking on your door. They didn't like. They said they clearly announced themselves, but that is murky at best. And didn't realize he was in the shootout with police until like they were already into it, right? And at which case, like they surrendered, but Breonna Taylor had already died from a no-knock raid. And then I think of other cases too, where like Philando Castile's case, which still bugs the heck out of me that the NRA didn't jump on that one, and the conservative movement didn't jump on that one, because that guy was pulled over and he's like. The police asked him, like, do you have any weapons on you? He's like, yep, I'm a legal pistol. I have a legal concealed carry. And he's like, I'm going to get my cards though. And the police officer freaked out and shot him. Like just couldn't keep his cool in that situation where someone was like, nope, I'm telling you I'm a legal gun owner and like I have a weapon in this car. I'm not going to make any sudden movements, but like you need me to get my ID, so I'm getting that for you. And the police officer still shot him. Like how do you really have a Second Amendment right if that's what can happen to you?
Correct. And then how do we prevent stuff like that from happening? And the argument then is that's where conservatives divorce themselves from their rights because they pick a side, and the side is they will take all of our guns all of the time, and that will be the best way to keep police officers from overreacting. Correct? Like that's the danger that we're facing here.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm sorry, Kevin. We did do something about the Castile case. I feel like maybe we should revisit that and have another discussion down the road about that because it is incredibly important to have conversations about these situations where we don't freak out, where we present this as what you're asking for is a contraction of your Second Amendment rights. What you're saying by giving every single police officer the benefit of the doubt in these murky situations is a problem. And in the Breonna Taylor case, one of the police officers shot 6 or 7 bullets into another apartment. Okay, that wasn't even Breonna Taylor's apartment. So, like, they were on high alert, and we need to talk about the no-knock warrant and how that sets up an incredible amount of tension. It's incredible. You know, like, Breonna Taylor would still be alive. A police officer would still have his job had they not issued a no-knock warrant. There was a lot wrong with that case. They were even... We should have another conversation. We should do a whole show about that, you know?
We could do a whole other show on that. And so I don't know why. So that was like, well, like both of those are kind of weird because like they got picked up by like libertarians and like Black Lives Matter folks. And the conservatives like just total crickets on those for some reason.
Yeah.
And because like in that case, as well as that, like the case with this Air Forceman as well, like Roger Fortson, they're all black. So it's like, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a factor, but like that's why like Black Lives Matter picked up those previous cases, even in cases where the Second Amendment community, like the dedicated Second Amendment community, was like out front talking about these issues, but like kind of the old school NRA folks were like just not at all jumping into it when they could have shown an opportunity for leadership there, and they're just nothing. How can you trust them after cases like that where they're quiet?
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, sometimes you have to choose, I guess.
I agree. I mean, I think it's a tough call. So Kevin, after a difficult conversation like this, I think you have a local issue that we want to kind of transition to. But what I want to do is promise our regular audience that watches us on the internet and the WYSL audience that you and I are going to do a deeper dive when I have better internet service on how we take a look at people when they divorce themselves from their First Amendment rights and their Second Amendment rights and how they get tricked into doing it. But you want to bring up a local situation of what I love to talk about, an economic credit farming situation going on right in Rochester, New York. One more time, the government's going to pay a big business to come to town. Isn't that wonderful?
They sure are. So like, you know, I don't know if you've heard of this business, Topgolf, which there isn't one in the Rochester area, but I've heard they're actually a lot of fun. You know, my brother travels around to a bunch of cities, and he tells me like he goes to a bunch of these things that they're fun, like big indoor golfing places. So people were excited. There's a development called Citygate that they were going to end up in. This was announced like September of last year. So I was like, oh, cool. We're getting Topgolf in Rochester. Hooray. Here's a cool like tourist attraction that like, a bunch of other like bigger cities have, and Rochester's on the map, right? But of course, like initially they're like, yeah, and like they're going to pay full taxes, and like they're going to, you know, they're not getting any subsidies. Well, the IDA, the County of Moreau IDA, Comida, they're like, you know, we're actually we're considering, and next week is when the vote is, we're considering subsidizing them. They're asking for for 4.3 million in county incentives to do that. So who knows what that'll be, if it's going to be a
Look,
direct
that's
subsidy.
basically $5 a square foot.
That's
It's basically nothing, Kevin. Don't even worry about it. It's nothing on a 48,000 square foot facility. It's nothing.
That's what they said. Like their actual like quote is like, it's going to create 150, 200 construction jobs and 300 permanent jobs. Economic impact of $10 to $20 million per year, 150 to 250 million in local economic impact over 10 years. They're going to get 250,000 visitors coming to the facility every year. So like, it's like just a no brainer to subsidize them. And, you can't help but like ask the question, okay, if you guys are going to kick so much butt, why do you need the subsidy? What do you need it for? What, like, it sounds like you're going to make a whole bunch of money. It sounds like you should just put up the capital yourself and you're going to make like a ton back and it's going to be great. Like, so what on earth do we need the county to subsidize you for? Just make back that money. Like, take the risk like everyone else. What are we doing here?
Well, first of all, big businesses have entire offices dedicated to credit farming. They have entire offices dedicated to shaking down local municipalities, local governments to put money in their pocket. Now, it's a competitive market, right? Like there's, say, Rochester or perhaps Lowell, Massachusetts want a Topgolf. It's a successful business. It is an entertaining venue. They just keep representing their offer. It's like the monorail salesman. It's either Springfield or Shelbyville. And it's like, who's going to give us the best offer? So for them, it's a negotiating strategy and a negotiating ploy. But like the whole Biden thing, it suggests to me that taxes are just too high, that we have a slush fund that the government has control over, that they can just say, you know what we will do is give a big business like Topgolf $4.3 million. It's a wild situation that we have going on.
Yeah. No, it is ridiculous.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. And I agree with like this is how a lot of companies look at it, right? They're just looking to see if they can get a little bit more, because they pit towns and states against each other to try to make the most. Because again, businesses are going to do that. They're going to try to make the most money. I get that they do that. It is incumbent on like our county leaders to say, nope, we're not playing that game. That is a bad game. Rochester's a valuable market in its own right, so you don't need these subsidies to thrive here. And like your numbers back it up. If you're going to do so well, you're going to generate $250 million over the next 10 years, then it sounds like you don't need the subsidies. You are going to be good to go. But I've heard from people who are running for like county ledge before when they're seeking the Libertarian Party nomination. And what they said was like, well, the environment in New York State is so difficult to operate within that we have to offer these subsidies or no business would ever open here. So like they end up like both the county leaders and town leaders, etc., state leaders all end up with this mindset of like, well, there's nothing we can do about the tough regulatory environment. I guess we just have to subsidize it. And instead of fixing the actual root problem, we just get back to, well, you know what we could do? It's not going to cost us anything. We'll just steal more money from taxpayers and give it to these businesses so that we can be the heroes when they come in and open up, and we can do a ribbon cutting with them because we gave them the money. Hooray.
Yeah. Vote for me. They're buying your vote with your money. It's an amazing, amazing time to be alive. It's the most bizarre timeline that I can imagine. They take your money, give it to a big business. They take your money and give it to a college kid. They take your money and give it to whatever program to incentivize homelessness in San Francisco. They take your federal money and then they expect you to thank them for it. And I don't know, man. It drives me crazy. I do get the argument. I'll steel man the argument that it is too expensive to do business in New York, that it is overregulated, that building is next to impossible with all the regulatory requirements and the seekers and the environmental impact studies that have to be done and the engineering requirements that have to be met. So they have a valid argument that it is incredibly expensive to do business in New York. The other one is when we subsidize businesses, aren't we really just letting them keep their tax money that they've already generated elsewhere? So that's another steel man to this argument. What do you think about those two positions?
So the first one is, just like I mentioned with the housing thing, you need to fix the fundamental problem, right? Like, and we're not going to really like develop a thriving economy in New York until you fix the fundamental problem of it. It's too difficult to do business here. And that's going to take a lot of hard work and, you know, a lot of tough decisions. I get it. People have gotten used to these perks, these requirements, these regulations. They feel safe and cozy and warm with them, but you're going to have to do hard work of taking that apart. And in terms of like, you know, oh, they're going to generate a bunch of revenue anyway. Like, we don't know that, because a lot of businesses don't do it. Like I don't really like the government like acting as a venture capitalist and saying like, oh, the government should be spending a bunch of money or in fact directly investing in these companies because they're going to get the payoff in the end with taxpayers. Sometimes they're going to spend $150 billion and get nothing. You know, they're going to do what they did with like the solar out in Buffalo. They're going to do what they've done with like a lot of the photonics places in Rochester, just spend ridiculous amounts of money and we have nothing to show for it. Just absolutely nothing. And it's I don't know, incredibly frustrating that like that's the only way they see to do business here in New York is through subsidies. But on that note, we're going to have to call it a show for our WYSL audience. We're going to keep going with our online audience. Thank you, WYSL, for joining us here on A Free Solution. Have a great night, folks. Take care.
All right, I'm paying for the better internet next week, Kevin, because this is silly. Like there was moments where it was perfect, and then there was moments where I was like, all right, his mouth is moving 100 miles an hour, and I don't hear a word. And hopefully, what I say next follows from what he just said.
All right, get the fancy.
It's like I don't know. I'm faking it. Hopefully, I'm pretty close because I know how you think and I know how our shows go. It was wild. I'm paying the $5. It's only $5. I don't know. What was I, Mr. Cheapo here?
Yeah.
So look, Lorraine is a new guest out there. Did you see this? Yeah. We're being forced to live in a commie state. That's hard to argue. You know, there's a lot of drive towards. It's more of like a communist, fascistic kind of thing where government is interacting with big business under the guise of providing good jobs for common people. And I don't like that argument. I want a thriving economy that's based on us, that starts with us, that builds out from the middle class. But we're not going to get that. Not with the current president, not with the current administration. I don't know. It's wild. Yeah. Trump's not going to do it either because he's the same way.
He's just you know, red flavored communist. It's a blue flavored communist.
Yeah.
I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but less than I could be.
I forgive you.
Yeah. And I mean, you could always be an immigrant, move to another state. That's an option, I guess, too. But I know I like living here. I like my house. They're the ones who suck. Why should I leave? Is kind of my attitude on that stuff.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. Let's see.
Got a little side conversation going out there in the internet while I'm trying to keep track of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at it. It looks the whole other conversation going on. Just trying to see if there's any good ones to throw up here. You know, maybe this one, real massive.
All right, brother. So look, I have been.
He says, wouldn't it be grand if we could all live above and beyond our means with no worries to actually paying for things we bought last month and just do it again month after month? Yeah, that'd be nice. We cannot print our own money though, so unlike the government, we should fund our own government. There we go. Yeah. Wait, is that illegal? I don't know.
I don't know. A lot of these NGOs and stuff look a little bit like massive new style governments bringing their version of government and governing to communities. So I mean, there's some pretty big money flows coming out of them. Purple communists, I like that, Shelley.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a thing.
All right, so look, Kevin, I normally get to. I normally get to smoke a cigarette or two during our show, and so now I'm like having a nicotine fit. So I'm thinking we cut this one a little bit shorter than normal.
It's fine. The delay is getting to like several seconds now, so like conversations are tough. And I'll start, Patricia. It's okay. You can have the
All
side conversations. It's fine. It's encouraged. Y'all have your side conversations. You know, it helps us. You get more engagement on videos. Like, it helps us. All right. But on that note, let's call it a night.
It really does, and we appreciate it.
All right. Good night, folks.
I missed your first comment, Patricia. So